The first shell took the night and folded it like paper. For one breath, the trench was a clean line in the dark. Then the earth tore open. Mud climbed into the air in a slow, impossible fountain. Something hot slapped my cheek, and I tasted iron before I understood it was blood. I pressed my face into the wall of dirt. The wood supports shivered. Men shouted names that meant nothing in the roar. Somewhere above us, the sky kept burning without showing its face. I had been a soldier for 3 weeks, and I was already trying to become invisible. The second shell landed closer. The impact came through my ribs like a fist. The ground bucked. A scream rose, then became a wet gurgle, then stopped. In the blackness, someone grabbed my shoulder. "Keep your mouth shut," a voice said, calm as a man in church. "Breathe through your nose. If you open your mouth, you swallow the fear." I nodded, even though he could not see me. I did as he said. The air smelled of damp clay, sweat, cheap tobacco, and something else, sharp and sweet, like a butcher's floor after rain. The barrage eased, not ending, only stepping back. Silence came in short pieces, like broken glass. When I lifted my head, the trench was alive with shadows, helmets, fingers, the dim ember of a cigarette hidden in a palm. The white flash of teeth when someone whispered a joke too small for laughter. A hand shoved a tin cup toward me. Someone had found coffee or something that looked like it. I drank. It was bitter and cold. It did not warm me. Nothing did. A flare rose beyond the wire. The world turned white for a second, as if God had taken a photograph. In that light I saw faces, and what the light revealed was worse than darkness. Older boys, men with eyes that had seen too much and still had to see more. A tall one leaned against the trench wall, relaxed as if he owned time. He had a broad mouth and a steady jaw and hands that looked carved for work. He noticed me staring. "You're new," he said. "Yes," I answered. My voice sounded small. He offered his hand. "Kat, they call me Kaczynski." I took his hand. It was warm. It startled me how human it felt. "Where are you from?" he asked. "A town near the river," I said. "I was in school." Kat nodded as if that explained everything, as if school and war were simply neighboring streets. "They told you stories," he said. I did not answer because the truth had arrived too fast to put into words. He looked down the trench, toward where the darkness pressed against the parapet. "Listen," he said. "Out there the war is not flags and speeches. Out there it is bread, it is boots, it is the small things. You learn that, you live longer." I wanted to ask him how long longer meant. A week. A month until winter. But another flare went up and men began moving with purpose. The quiet was changing shape again. A runner came stumbling along the trench, bent double, clutching a message in his fist. His face shone with sweat. He nearly fell at the lieutenant's feet. "Stand to," the order came down. Low voices repeated it, passing it from mouth to mouth like contraband. Rifles were checked. Bayonets slid into place with a sound like teeth biting bone. My hands moved on their own. I had done this on the training ground where the air was clean and the instructors yelled because they liked the sound of power. Here, no one yelled. They did not waste breath. Kat moved beside me. He did not hurry. He had the patience of a man who understands that rushing does not make death late. "First time?" he asked. I swallowed. "Yes." He leaned in, so close I could smell tobacco on him. "Then remember," he said, "do what you must and feel what you must after, not during." I nodded again. My throat was dry. The lieutenant rose on the fire step, his silhouette cut against the dim sky. He stared outward as if he could see through darkness and wire and the distance between two lines of men who did not know each other's names. Then he raised his hand. The whistle shrieked. We climbed. The night outside the trench was wider than I expected. The ground was broken, pitted with craters, stitched with barbed wire. It smelled of wet grass crushed under mud and the sour reek of old smoke. The air was warm, summer thick, but my skin felt cold anyway, as if my body had decided it would rather be winter than this. We ran in short bursts, stumbling, ducking, rising again. Bullets cracked through the dark like snapping sticks. A machine gun began its steady sowing, and men fell as if the earth was pulling them down by the ankles. Someone in front of me tripped. I thought he had caught his foot in wire. Then I saw the way he collapsed, folded inward, hands clapping at his stomach as if trying to hold himself together. I wanted to stop. My legs kept going. My heart did not beat like a drum. It fluttered like a trapped bird. A shell burst to my left. Heat blasted my face. Dirt rained down. I coughed and tasted soil. A piece of something struck my shoulder. It was soft and it slid off. My mind refused to name it. We reached the first line of wire. Men threw cutters in, hacking. The wire sang under strain, a thin metallic scream. Hands bled, fingers slipped. The smell of blood rose warm and immediate. Down, someone hissed. We flattened. The ground was wet and it drank my uniform. The grass pressed against my cheek. I could hear men breathing, quick and desperate, right beside me. I could hear my own breath, too loud, too alive. In the pauses between shots there was a different sound. Not ours, the enemy's. A cough, a whispered order, the faint clink of metal, human noises close enough to make my stomach twist. So they were there. Not monsters, not shadows. Men. A flare went up and we were caught in its light, bodies pinned to the earth like insects on a board. The machine gun found us. The air filled with the whine of bullets. Dirt sprayed. Someone shrieked and rolled, and the shriek turned into a choking sound. I pressed my face into the mud. I wanted to crawl inside the earth and let it close over me. Then Cat's hand clamped my belt and hauled me forward. "Move," he said, not loudly. The calm in his voice was more terrifying than shouting. It meant he understood exactly what was happening and was still able to speak. We crawled through a cut in the wire. The metal tore at my sleeves. Something caught my skin. I felt the sting, then the warm seep of blood. It was nothing compared to the warm seep happening everywhere. We rose at the lip of a shell crater. The enemy trench was close now, a dark cut in the ground. Grenades arced like small comets. One landed, bounced, and disappeared. A dull thump followed. A wave of heat rolled out. Then a chorus of cries, raw as animals. I jumped into the trench without thinking. The trench was narrower than ours, and it stank of sweat, smoke, and a different kind of fear. It was not unfamiliar. It was the same fear, only worn by other uniforms. A man came at me around a bend. He was young, his helmet sat crooked. His eyes were wide, white rings around black pupils. He raised his rifle, not aiming, just pointing it toward where I was. I lifted mine. The bayonet was fixed. It was suddenly enormous, absurdly real, a piece of steel meant for a body. He hesitated. So did I. In that fraction of a second, the training and the speeches and the posters all vanished, and what remained was a single human decision inside a tunnel of dirt. He was not charging. He was afraid. I could see his hands shaking. If I let him live, he might kill Cat. He might kill the boy behind me. He might kill me. If I killed him, I would have to carry the weight of his face forever. He lurched forward, more in panic than courage. My body moved before my mind chose. The bayonet went in. There is no clean way to describe it. It does not glide. It catches. It meets resistance that feels like pushing through thick cloth and then through meat. The sound is small, a wet exhale. His mouth opened. His eyes went even wider. His rifle fell. He grabbed my arms, not to fight but to hold on, as if contact could keep him in the world. I pulled back. He slid down the trench wall, leaving a dark smear behind him. I stood there with my hands out as if I had dropped something precious. The trench around me was chaos. Men fought in tight spaces, brutal and close. Grenades thumped. Rifles cracked. Someone smashed a shovel down like an axe. Someone else cried for his mother, not in a dramatic way, but in a thin, helpless voice that made my stomach knot. I wanted to run. There was nowhere to run. Cat shoved past me, firing from the hip. He glanced at the man I had stabbed. He did not look at my face. Maybe he did not need to. "Keep moving," he said. "Don't stop. If you stop, you die." I followed like an obedient animal, turning corners, stepping over bodies that were still warm. My boots slipped in mud and blood. My breathing came in jerks. My mind began to detach, as if it was floating above and watching a stranger do these things. Somewhere, a whistle blew again. Orders echoed. Then another sound, lower, deeper, the unmistakable roll of a counter-barrage. The enemy was waking fully now. We held the trench for minutes that felt like years. Then the order came to pull back. Not because we had won, but because we could not remain. Because there was no room in the world for victory in a place like this. We ran back over the same ground, now lit by fires. The night smelled of burning cloth and scorched hair. The air was thick with smoke that scratched my throat. The summer heat pressed down like a hand. I stumbled into a shell crater and fell hard, wind knocked out of me. And in that crater, I found myself not alone. The man I had stabbed was there. He must have crawled or fallen in after me, dragged by the same gravity that drags all men down. He lay on his side, his uniform dark at the belly. His face was pale in the dim light. His mouth opened and closed, drawing air in shallow pulls. Each breath made a faint whistle, as if his body had become a broken instrument. He was not dead. My hands began to shake. I pressed myself against the crater wall, trying to be small. He turned his head slightly. His eyes found me. There was no hatred in them, only pain and confusion and something like pleading. His lips moved. I could not hear the words over the distant guns, but his eyes said enough. Why, my rifle lay across my knees. I could finish it. One shot, one clean ending, but I could not move. I had killed him already. And yet he was still there, living for a few more minutes inside the ruins of his body, paying a price that my speeches had never mentioned. The barrage roared again. Dirt fell into the crater. The man flinched, a weak reflex. His fingers clawed at the mud. I crawled closer without deciding. The act felt separate from me, like a dream. He was younger than I had thought. A boy, really, not much older than me. A picture slipped from his pocket as he moved. It fell into the mud. I picked it up. Even in the dark, I could make out the faces. A woman and two small children, posed stiffly, as if told to be proud. My stomach turned. I held the picture out to him, not knowing why. My fingers were filthy. I wiped at it with my sleeve and only smeared more mud. His eyes flickered toward it. His mouth opened. A sound came out, a whisper lost in the noise. Then he coughed and blood bubbled at his lips. I tore open my bread bag with shaking hands. Inside was a piece of hard bread and a small tin of meat, crushed. I opened the tin with my bayonet. The metal cut my thumb. I did not feel it. I offered him water from my canteen. The water sloshed. He could not lift his head. I tipped a few drops to his mouth. Some went in. Some spilled down his cheek. He tried to speak again. He managed, and then the word dissolved into a wet breath. I leaned close. "I'm sorry," I said, not loudly. The words were ridiculous. They were too small. They were insultingly thin. I did not say it for him. I said it for me, as if apology could clean steel. He stared at me, and his eyes did something strange. They softened, then clouded, then sharpened again. He was fighting for air for seconds. The world above us thundered. Dirt fell. Shrapnel hissed. Somewhere men were dying unseen, as anonymous as insects in a storm. In the crater it was only the two of us. The enemy I had been taught to hate, and the boy I had become. I pressed my hand against his wound, as if I could hold life inside him by force. The blood was hot, slick, and it kept coming. It soaked my palm, my sleeve. It was his, and now it was on me, and it would never truly come off. His breath grew weaker. Each inhale was a struggle. Each exhale sounded like giving up. His eyes kept searching my face, as if memorizing it, as if trying to place me in a world where this made sense. I wanted to tell him my name. I wanted to tell him he would not be alone. I wanted to tell him the war was a mistake, that we were all victims of men who would never lie in craters at night. But all of that was too large for his failing lungs. He shuddered once, a deep ripple through his body, and then his chest stopped moving. For a moment I waited. I expected him to inhale again. I expected him to return, because my mind could not accept that a person could vanish so quickly. But he did not. The crater became a tomb with no lid. I sat there with my hand still on him, feeling the heat leave. The night air touched my wet sleeve and it cooled, sticky against my skin. Then a flare went up and I saw his face clearly. Not an enemy face. A face that had once laughed at a table. A face that had bent over children. A face that had kissed someone goodbye. A face that would never do those things again. Something inside me broke, not loudly, not dramatically. It broke like a thin thread snapping under constant strain. I began to whisper, not praying, not really, just speaking into the darkness. I didn't want to, I said. I didn't know, they told us, they told us. No one answered. The guns did not care. Above the crater, the war continued its work, as steady and indifferent as rain. When the barrage eased, I climbed out. My legs felt distant, as if they belonged to a different man. I ran back toward our lines, stumbling, slipping, hands raw from wire. The night pressed around me, heavy and warm, and still I shivered. In the trench, faces looked up. Some were missing, some were new. The line had changed shape again, it always did. Cat found me. He looked at my hands, at the blood dried black on my cuffs. "You're alive," he said. It was not congratulations. It was an observation, like noting the weather. I nodded. He handed me a cigarette. I had never smoked before the war. Now I took it without thinking. He lit it with a small flame cupped in his palm. The smoke filled my mouth. It tasted harsh and bitter and real. My hand still trembled. Cat watched me for a long moment. "First time," he said quietly. I could not speak. He looked away toward the parapet where the darkness waited. "You'll carry it," he said. "That's the price." The trench settled into a false quiet. Men lay back against the walls. Someone bandaged a friend by touch alone. Somewhere down the line, a man sobbed softly, trying to hide it. I sat with my back against the dirt, cigarette burning down between my fingers. The summer night was warm above, but down here the earth held a coldness that never left. It seeped into bones and into thoughts. I thought of my classroom, of the clean chalk smell, of the way our teacher had spoken of honor with bright eyes, as if it were a gift waiting for us. I thought of the photograph in the mud. I wondered if the children in it would grow up. I wondered what their father had told them before he left. I wondered if he had believed, even for a moment, that he was going somewhere noble. I tried to remember the face of the man I had killed without the crater's flare lighting it. I wanted to forget it. I also feared the day I could. And in that fear, I understood something I had not been taught. The war does not end when the guns stop. It ends only when it has finished living inside you. Cat spoke again, softer than before. "Sleep when you can," he said. "Tomorrow is always hungry." I closed my eyes, but in the darkness behind my eyelids the crater returned. The boy's eyes returned. The thin whistle of his breath returned. I opened my eyes again and stared at the trench wall inches from my face. Dirt, splinters, small roots. The simple materials of the world made into a place for killing. Somewhere far off, a bird called once, confused by the light of flares. Then it fell silent. I listened to the silence between the distant guns, and I realized the most terrible thing. I was already learning how to live here, not as a hero, not as a man, but as something else. As a survivor shaped by mud, fear, and the quiet weight of what I had done. When the next barrage came, I did not flinch as hard. That frightened me more than anything. Because it meant the war was succeeding. and because I could not remember with certainty the last time I had felt like a boy. The night went on, warm above, cold below. The trench breathed with us, a long scar filled with whispering ghosts, and in that darkness I understood my future in one simple, unbearable truth. I would not die first. I would die slowly. Inside,